Framed by the poacher, the police and the courts in an ugly, politically influenced conspiracy and sentenced to 15 years in Zimbabwe's prisons. During my first 6 years in prison, I watched over 2,200 guys die. But I was sent to solitary confinement anyway for 2 years. It was cold, lonely and dark, like being buried alive. You couldn't even see your hand. Desperate, on day 6, I got on my knees and I prayed. My ancestors were part of the French Huguenots, who due to religious persecution fled France and settled in the Cape between 1688 and 1691. A total of 178 families on 4 ships. In 1913, my great-grandfather trekked from De Aar in the Northern Cape to a little place called West Nicholson in southern Rhodesia, now Zimbabwe. And that's where my life started. From humble beginnings, as a 4th-generation Zimbabwean in a cattle ranching background. I tragically lost my charismatic father at the tender age of 12 and saint of a mother to breast cancer in 1993. While the death of a parent is an unforgettable experience, it somehow strengthened me to form a family of my own. And just when life seemed perfect with a beautiful loving wife and 2 adorable children, my kingdom around me was shredded when my wife and I divorced in 1996. After experiencing what I thought were the worst of life's tragedies already, nothing could have prepared me for the exponential challenges and tough times that lay ahead. I'm going to start off by sharing a little bit of my life before prison, then the horrendous conditions that I endured, mixed in with a few life lessons, and then the main life lessons I learned while I was in prison. But let me highlight the contrast of my life before I got sent to prison. I was living the good life. I worked hard, I played hard, and was an avid sportsman. I'm playing several rugby tests for Zimbabwe too. I lived what you might call a very successful life with numerous thriving businesses. I was so busy being successful though, that after 14 years, my marriage fell apart. And I no longer lived under the same roof as my beloved children. But through making the right business decisions, by the year 2000, life couldn't have been better for this farm boy who grew up dirt poor. I was extremely happy, making plenty of money in my safari business. I was flying my own aircraft, had a fishing resort on the shores of beautiful Lake Kariba, flashy cars, houseboats, speedboats, you name it. And to top it off, I was engaged to a beautiful woman. Then, in an instant, my world turned upside down. It all started one weekend in December 2000 when I went on a fishing trip with friends to my fishing resort on Lake Kariba. And late one afternoon, one of my mates and I decided to go tiger fishing on the lake, leaving the other guys bream fishing in the river. And on our way back, we spotted 2 fish poachers in a steel boat, who immediately upon seeing us, started paddling hastily for the shore in an effort to get away from us. Knowing they were notorious poachers, I drove my boat towards them to scare them off, and the wake of my boat tilted their boat, causing them to jump out into the water, which was about 1.5 meters deep, and they were about 3 meters from the shore. My friend and I then watched as they ran away into the bush and thought nothing more of it. The following day, the police arrived with one of the poachers and accused us of drowning the other one. To get a long story short, I was framed by the poacher, the police and the courts in an ugly, politically influenced conspiracy and sentenced to 15 years in Zimbabwe's prisons, of which 5 were removed as remission. Unbelievably, my co-accused only got a $10 fine and was set free because he was not driving the boat. And that's exactly as it was stated in the judgment. On the 3rd of April 2003, during the height of the land invasion chaos in Zimbabwe, against police evidence, without a body and on presumptions, I was convicted of drowning that poacher. The shock was inexpressible. I was innocent. I was a successful, self-made businessman with a high standing in the community. You can only imagine what was going through my mind when they read out that verdict. But what I didn't know then was from that moment on, my life would never be the same again. For the first 8 years, only one set of clothing was allowed at any one time. A standard white short-sleeved shirt and a pair of drawstring white shorts. Underwear was forbidden. After 6 months, you got a change of clothing. Sometimes. Other times after 9 months, leaving us walking around in tatters. I shared a cell 13 meters long by 3 meters wide with 78 other inmates. Each person had 33 centimeters, 13 inches, marked out on the walls in chalk. That was your space. The toilet was a stainless steel bowl sunk into an open 1 meter square cement block in one corner. We were packed like sardines on our sides, with legs all crossing over in the middle. And we all faced the same direction. When you turned over, it was all together. Guys who had to use the toilet at night couldn't help but trample you on the way to the toilet. As cushioning against the cold concrete floor, you'd fold 2 of your paper-thin, worn-out, lice-ridden blankets several times to fit your space, then covered yourself with a third one. And your clothes were wrapped around your toothbrush and toothpaste, or they'd get stolen, and that was your pillow. From sleeping on those freezing hard floors, my hips had bruised black rings for years, and shoulders still give trouble today. Can you imagine the discomfort? Those floors are cold and hard, and not even the breath you take is your own. The back of somebody's head is there, and you can feel breathing on the back of your neck. Can anything be further removed from freedom than that? During those lonely long years, I'd watch the pigeons day after day. After they'd eaten the pieces of pup off the exercise yard floor, they'd fly over those high razor wire topped walls, and I watched a million times that I could somehow just fly away with them and be free again. And I don't believe there's a prisoner that doesn't think that, because it is the only glimpse of freedom you get to see in there. It's just cold walls, bars, and razor wire. No furniture whatsoever. No beds, no tables, no chairs, no cupboards, nothing. It's just rows of filthy folded blankets and hundreds of well-used water bottles on bare concrete floors. For the first 8 years, the worst thing to deal with were the lice. Thousands of them that never went away, ever. They would crawl and bite day and night, leaving itchy, weeping blisters. And because they never stopped, they were draining, both mentally and physically. And there's nothing you could do about it. We had no basins or taps in the cells, and only one set of clothing was allowed at any one time. So we had to wash our clothes in the cell toilets at night wearing a blanket, then hang them on the walls with smuggled book staples to dry by the next morning. 3 or 4 of us would get together and take turns to wash our clothes, because one garment had to be used to block the toilet to allow the toilet bowl to fill up when attempting to flush. No toilets flushed in any prisons I was in. The water only ever dribbled in slowly. Then we'd wash the clothes on the cement blocks surrounding the toilet bowl, dipping them in and out as we washed. In 2005, during the Zimbabwe dollar crash, Harare city ran out of water. For 3 years, while in Chikurubi Maximum Security Prison, each prisoner was allocated only 1 plastic cup of water a day. 1 cup of dirty orange city runoff water from a nearby dam, carried by farm prisoners. That was to drink, clean your teeth, wash your face, bath, everything, for 3 years. I learned in prison that the most important things in life cannot be bought. Health, loved ones, and friends, in that order. Health. Proverbs 17:22 says, "A cheerful heart is good medicine, but a crushed spirit dries up the bones." During my first 6 years in prison, I watched over 2,200 guys die. I'll say that again. During my first 6 years in prison, I watched over 2,200 guys die. After being moved to a medium security prison during the cholera outbreak of 2008 and 2009, in 8 months, out of 1,200 of us prisoners at Harare Central Prison, 432 guys died. More than 1/3 of us in 8 months. In one weekend, 22 guys died. And that triggered something inside me about my health. And I want to challenge every one of you that are listening here today to do a rain check on your health. Because once your health is gone, everything else in your life will have no meaning whatsoever. Loved ones, Proverbs 17:17 says, "As a friend loves at all times, and a brother is born for a time of adversity." In my case, it was my darling sister. In June 2006, the prisoner death rate was so high from malnutrition and disease that prison headquarters started allowing relatives to deliver food to their loved ones daily. And my darling sisters, Bev and Lynn, fed me for 3 months, selling furniture and scraping money from wherever, until Lynn sold her clay pot business and gave up her career just to feed me for 4 more years. That takes a very special person. And I can honestly say that without her, I wouldn't be sitting here today. I'm truly blessed to have her in my life. And unfortunately, very few relatives could financially afford to feed their loved ones daily, and I helped as many guys as I could afford to. But the hunger continued for most. But friends, family, love and support sustained me as much as the warm home-cooked food they brought. Friends, Proverbs 27:17 says, "As iron sharpens iron, so one man sharpens another." There is a special unwritten code that bonds friends like we all share in this part of the world. The warm, caring, and considerate society we make up from all walks of life can never be equaled anywhere. I share treasured memories with thousands of good people in Africa. And it was those memories and their endless generosity and consideration and knowing what a fantastic bunch of people we still have left here that kept me going all those years in hell. Knowing that one day I'd be traveling around reminding people never to forget the value of your friends. Because only when you have them all taken away do you realize how much they mean to you. After Red Cross had taken over feeding in March 2009 and things got back to normal in there, we began a soccer league. And I was delighted to make the prison squad as a goalkeeper, giving me the privilege to walk under strict escort to play against the officer side on a field in their compound. And during our jovial march there, singing all the way with fellow players, I asked one of the guards if I may touch my first tree in 6.5 years. When granted permission, I joyously broke formation and did so. And I clearly remember the roughness of the bark, reminding me of my granddad's farms, and the distinct smell of that jacaranda tree, which I knew so well. You have no idea how beautiful and uplifting it felt just to touch a tree and feel green grass again. My first evening at Connemara Open Prison, which is a farm prison where I was transferred after 8 years, I spent sitting around an open fire on old logs and bleached cattle skulls, chatting with old Ndebele inmates. Ndebele is a tribe in Zimbabwe. Now I remember getting lost in the interesting stories, the beauty of the sunset, the dancing flames, the tranquil call of a nightjar, and the bright stars and the moon, which I hadn't seen for 8 lonely long years. I didn't see a sunrise or a sunset either for my first 8 years. Now, I appreciate the everyday little things in life, like a soft bed, a hot bath, a tasty meal, or a spontaneous cuddle from a loved one. Because those are the things you miss most when you have it all taken away. There are things we know that rejuvenate us. And for me, it has always been nature. I am, and will forever be, a farm boy from Zimbabwe. Nature is in my blood. Touching a tree, smelling the earth, the feeling of soil in my hands. These things bring me restoration. And for you, it might be hanging out with friends, dancing, reading a good book, or swimming in the ocean. Whatever is good for you, do more of it. Despite the hell I'd gone through, physically and mentally, the worst part was knowing that my beloved children were growing up without me. Now, I told you in the beginning that not living under the same roof as them when my wife and I separated was the hardest thing. Imagine the heartbreak I felt when I went to prison. We have always been extremely close. It is a bond I will cherish and protect to my dying day. My proud son, Dusty, only 18 at the time, was always full of ambition. And we'd joyously discuss and dream of making millions and plan endless projects and adventures. He was following in my footsteps and loving every minute of it, ready to take on the world with his dad, and then I was ripped away. And my precious 16-year-old daughter, Sandy, and I had, and still have, an extraordinarily beautiful bond. Since a baby, she's always been my shadow. And especially as she is to me, I'm to her. But at 16, I was her anchor. I was everything in her eyes. She confided in me without boundaries and clung to everything I said and did. I loved them beyond expression. They loved me. And the times they needed me most, I wasn't there. They went through first loves, crushes, dances, 21st birthdays, and entered the wild world, and I wasn't there to see it. It is an annoying feeling knowing that I'm their father and should have been there, but I couldn't be. And I don't want anyone here ever to have to feel that way. Make enough time for your loved ones. What I've shared with you so far is about not even 5% of my story. The rest you can find in my book, which is available on my website, beatingchains.com. But I want to take you all back 10 years in your life. So go back to middle of 2014 and think about where you were in your life at that time. Now think about how much you've accomplished in the last 10 years. That's what a big chunk I had taken away. But even in the depth of such horrendous experiences, I knew I had ultimate control of how I chose to feel and respond. Behind every severity lies an opportunity. And that experience gave me the opportunity to get to know hidden attributes about myself and time to consider some really important things in life. My life in chains taught me many lessons, and that's what I'd like to share with you now. How my faith and mental strength got me through there. Romans 8:35 says, "Can anything ever separate us from Christ's love? Does it mean he no longer loves us if we have trouble or calamity, or are persecuted, or hungry, or destitute, or in danger, or threatened with death?" The Lord didn't say we wouldn't have hardships in our life. He said he would walk with us through those hardships. After we moved to a medium security prison, while delivering food one day, my sister asked me if I would like an iPod. So I said to her, "What's an iPod?" She said, "It's a thing that plays music." So I said, "Well, how big is it?" She indicated the small, flat little thing. So I said, "Well, how many songs does it play?" She said, "About 1,000. I said, "No ways. So where do you put all the CDs? That's how much technology had advanced in just 6 years I've been away. Anyway, the following day, the iPod arrived under the salad. And about a week later, one of those cheap Nokia cell phones was sneaked in too, with a rechargeable battery. And it was exciting, risky business that you couldn't dream of in a maximum security prison. And everything was going perfectly until an envious prisoner reported me. After an unexpected search, unbelievably through some quick maneuvering with on-site guards, nothing was discovered. But I was sent to solitary confinement anyway for 2 years. That was extremely lonely. But after experiencing that precious little link to the outside world, I had to get my phone back. And I did, which made a huge difference. 18 months later, everything going perfectly, one of the friendly officers approached my house at 5 in the morning and whispered, "Russ, they're coming for your phone." And there's no way of getting a phone out of there. But if someone had brought me a protein powder about a month before, I'd never seen it before, and I opened it, broke that seal, tasted it. When I put the seal back and closed it, the seal stuck. So I kept it to hide my phone in. And it was a big process to get it in there. It had to go through the doctor and security. Anyway, that morning I opened it, broke the seal, took half the powder out, wrapped the phone in plastic. I only had my phone that day. Put it in, put the powder back, put the seal, closed it. 6 o'clock, the guards arrive. What they do is they make you strip naked, then you jump with your legs open like you're hiding something. And then we all walk out stark naked into the courtyard, 1,200 guys. And they do the search. After the search, I come back in my cell, and everything is upside down everywhere. But my protein powder, still in good shape. 5 minutes later, I'm summoned to the security office. So I walk in there, there are 4 guards standing, one seated behind a desk, and an empty chair. I hadn't sat in the chair for 7.5 years. So the guard says to me, "Take a seat." So I sat down, felt good. He said, "Do you have a girlfriend called Karen?" So I said, "No." I said, "I've been before prison called Karen." He said, "Okay. When did you last talk to her?" I said, "Long ago, before prison." He said, "Are you sure?" I said, "Yeah." So he hands me a letter addressed to me from Karen. "So now I was talking to you on the phone the other night. You sound so positive." After some intense questioning, this thought just came to me, and I said, "No, Karen was having lunch in Bulawayo, and they started chatting and soon realized that they both had boyfriends in the same prison. So the lady said, 'Let me call my boyfriend, who's a guard in there, and he can call Russ, and then you guys can have a chat.' So I used the guard's phone. But after I couldn't tell them what the guard's name was, they didn't buy it. An hour later, I'm escorted up to the officer in charge's office. When you go up there, it's big trouble. And they were waiting, about 15 big brass officers, all standing in a half circle. Officer in charge behind his big desk, and my empty chair in the middle. He said, "Take a seat." So I sat down. He said, "If you don't tell me what that guard's name is, your life in this prison is going to change." And him and I got on really well. So I said, "Officer, I don't know his name." And then the questions started, like how old was he, how tall, what rank, where did you make the call, how long ago did you make the call? And I answered as best I could, and they were getting furious because they couldn't pin me and everything. And then the head of the soccer, very nice officer, he said, "Do you want to talk to the officer in charge on your own?" So I said, "Yes, please." So they all leave. I closed the door. I said, "Officer, we've both been through hell. We watched hundreds of guys die. I donated endless stuff to the prison service." I said, "Can't you just let this one go?" He said, "Russ, I don't care about you, but I want that guard's name now." He was furious. So I said, "Officer, I don't know his name." He said, "Okay." He calls the officers. He says, "Put him on death row, in the dark cell." So they escorted me over to the condemned section. They used to hang guys in those days. And there were 56 cells. 52 had guys waiting to be hung. And of the 4 that were left, one was called the dark cell because it never had there's no windows in the cell. So they're 3 meters long, 1 meter wide, and 3 meters high with a vent. There's no window. And that dark cell had a staircase built over the vent, and the electric light didn't work. So it was pitch black. And they used to put people in there to break them. So they made me strip naked. They made 3 filthy, worn-out, lice-ridden blankets, a 5-liter container cut off at the top as a toilet, same as solitary. and 1 liter of water. And that cell, 3 meters by 1 meter by 3 meters, was exactly the same size as my solitary confinement. Exactly the same. They locked me in there for 23 hours and 45 minutes a day. So I was allowed out 5 minutes in the morning to clean my teeth, 5 minutes at 10 o'clock to have a shower, 5 minutes at 3 o'clock to prepare for lockup. It was cold, lonely, and dark, like being buried alive. You couldn't even see your hand. Desperate, on day 6, I got on my knees and I prayed. And I'll never forget the feeling of like warm water being poured over me and a total sense of calmness. So I just sat back, leaning against the wall, and within about 30 minutes, I faintly heard my Afrikaans mate shouting from the soccer ground, "Hey, Ras, everything's okay, my mate, don't worry, everything's okay." So I jumped up, I said, "Hey, fool," I said, "Don't worry, Ras, everything's okay." So I thought, okay, lay down on the concrete, looking up at the darkness. Within 10 minutes, I unlocked my door. And those big locks, that noise goes right through you. Chucked me in my clothes, said, "The officer in charge wants to see you." So I go out into the blinding sun, across the courtyard, up the stairs to his office. And his exact words were, he said, "Hello, Russ." I said, "Hello, officer." He said, "Have you remembered the guy's name yet?" I said, "No, officer." He said, "I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to leave it in God's hands. You can go back to your cell." And at the exact moment when I was praying, my sister was paying him $200 to get me out of there. And that was a huge turning point in my spiritual walk, because I knew there was no coincidence then. And I'm very happy to say that Jesus is everything in my life today. I learned in prison not to let past thoughts hurt me. The past only exists in your head. It can only come to life if you let it. Jesus said in Matthew 6:27, "Can any one of you, by worrying, add a single hour to your life?" I was forced to live in that moment in prison, and it's one of the biggest lessons I still practice today. And to be able to find positives in all the negatives going on around me brought hope, which is a huge part of getting through prison life. Hope is the anchor of your soul. It's what kept me sane and grounded in there. Hope enabled me to see that there is light despite all the darkness. Let your hopes, not your troubles, shape your future. I'll say it again. Let your hopes, not your troubles, shape your future. And never look for hope outside of yourself. To find it, you need to look within. We are made in the image of God. The answers are within us. If you had said to me in year 1, you're going home in year 3, I would have said never. I'm going home now. Like 6 weeks, maybe 8 weeks I could live with. Anything beyond that was too painful. I counseled myself on how to think through the physical impact my thoughts had on me. You know, if I thought about my fiancé with another guy, or my mates on fishing trips, or trips to Vegas we went every year for marketing, it hurt too much, so I'd block it out until that peace returned. Why you should forgive. James 1, verse 19 and 20. Everyone should be quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to be angry. For a man's anger does not bring about the righteous life that God desires. Many of us are full of anger and resentment because of unforgiveness. The humiliation of being labeled a murderer in terrible conditions were extremely hard to deal with. That was the pain of my bitterness, anger, hatred, frustration, and revenge for what they'd done and were doing to me. I hated them bitterly. And initially would lie there for hours, wishing every terrible thing on each of them in turn, the poacher, the police, the judge, the ministry, and all who were involved in my conviction. Then one day, I was struck by the realization that they'd all forgotten about me long ago. Here I was, consumed by the unfairness of it all, and they, blissfully unaware of the evil I wished on them every day. In the end, I was only hurting myself. I was carrying all that in my head and beating myself up for nothing. The single biggest lesson I learned in prison was true forgiveness. And for me, It was bigger than anything I could have achieved on my own. True forgiveness was inspired by God Almighty, and so I was letting go. It was a huge weight off my shoulders. And I learned to live in the moment from then on. The past was too painful, and the future full of unkept promises. So I just dealt with each day as it was. I learned to have faith, because no amount of worrying was going to change what I was going through. If you have anger or resentment towards anyone in any way, it will eventually destroy you. Because that is what those emotions do. They steal from you. They steal happiness and freedom. Jesus said in Matthew 6:14, "For if you forgive other people when they sin against you, your heavenly Father will also forgive you." And many people ask me how I managed to forgive them for what they did to me. I remember the exact moment, walking in that exercise yard after about a year, and I was tired of all the anger, hatred, and bitterness. It was draining me daily. And I remember I just looked up and I said to myself, "Lord, take care of them and let me get through this road that's been put in front of me. What goes around comes around. They will get what they deserve. Their judgment day will come." And once I accepted that, my life in prison changed. And the amazing thing was, it wasn't a gradual process. It was an instant mindset shift. Like I had this secret that I was keeping for years and so scared, someone's going to find out. And then one day I just told the guys, out, it's gone. Forgiveness doesn't affect the people that hurt you. Forgiveness affects you. Forgiveness changes you. You can look at it in two ways. You can forgive, forget, and move forward, or you can retain, remember, and regret. The choice is yours. And if you say, "I'll forgive, but I'll never forget," then you still remember and will never move forward. And I don't mean forget the lessons learned from the incident. Just don't revisit the incident. You can't bounce back from anything unless you forgive those who you believe have done you wrong. And only when you forgive, let go of the past, can you be fully free to move forward with your full potential. Why you should be grateful and the big picture. Jesus said in Matthew 16:26, "And what do you benefit if you gain the whole world, but you lose your own soul?" Is anything worth more than your soul? What shall a man give in return for his soul? We all want too much in our lives, concentrating on what we haven't got instead of being grateful for what we have. And for me, giving thanks to God every day goes a long way. For my health, a beautiful family, a lovely wife, a lovely home, a soft bed, running water, and so on. When there's no food, no water, and people are dying all around you, you become grateful for the fact that you're still breathing. And another day is a blessing. When you lie in a cell with 78 other people, and your breath is not even your own, gratitude suddenly has a different meaning altogether. Accepting that what I went through cannot be changed, and being grateful for what it taught me, has unlocked my vision for my future. The healthiest of all human emotions is gratitude. Remember that and practice it. Having an attitude of gratitude is one of the most impactful habits for a fulfilling and healthy life. I learned to see the big picture of life in prison. At the innocent age of 6, I was sent to a cruel boarding school, 200 k's away from home. The bullying and beatings by masters and matrons to a little 6-year-old boy was disgusting. And we were only allowed to see our folks once every 3-month term. That was at half term. Even if they came to town, we weren't allowed to see them. It was supposed to upset the child. So I don't have good memories of my junior school days. And then the week before I left junior school, I lost my dad. And that turns our lives upside down. But I was always crazy about rugby and water polo and the war environment. And I enjoyed the wild waves of the Rhodesian Bush War throughout my teens. And I'm telling you this because I believe that resilience is something that is learned. You're not born with resilience, you're born with fortitude. And I think that my hard upbringing and the war environment created a wild, hardy character. I mean, hardships are part of everyday life. That I left the ranch house one day with my uncle. And it was 1979, I was 18 years old. We were going to dip cattle 20 k's away from on a ranch called Bundu Hills, deserted from the war, and like most of the ranches were back then. But it was part of the notorious mountain range with these huge solid granite mountains everywhere, and thick vegetation in between. And the ranches averaged 25,000 acres each, so there were big chunks of land. 1K from the dip crawl, a troop of baboons ran across the road in front of their vehicle. And there were thousands of them back then, and they were considered vermin. So I jumped out the vehicle with my rifle, no hat, no shirt, no shoes. It was November, so it was really hot, and took off after them, shouting to my uncle that I'd see him at the dip crawl. 2 hours later, I was completely lost and in a full spin. And there were just mountains and mountains. And by 6 o'clock that evening, exhausted, I hadn't stopped going all day, starving, I hadn't eaten nothing, and thirsty as anything. I'd only managed to find a drying up puddle with a dead giraffe in it, and that smelled like something else. And I was just desperate. And I remember in absolute desperation, I once again climbed about 100 meters up the side of one of the many mountains, looking for Mount Taula, which I knew and could work out where I was. And there were just mountains and more mountains. And I remember the desperate fear and feeling of hopelessness. I mean, I was just a teenager, all alone, in the heart of the war. There wasn't a single dwelling or anyone living within 20k radius, and it was getting dark. And the last thing this hardcore wild rugby player would ever have considered back then was to pray. I mean, I was okay. I didn't need help. I know those that need help go to church and pray. That's how it was in those days. But I got on my knees, first time in my life, and I prayed to God for help. And I'll never forget the feeling of warm water being poured over me. And I had no idea what it was. So when it happened on death row, I knew exactly what was going on. And I had this feeling of calmness. And I very purposefully stood up, turned around, just like being guided. Somebody said, just walk down the same way you came up. And I walked down that mountain. When I got to the bottom where the solid granite went into the soil was long grass. And I carried on walking just like a zombie. I just walked. 10 meters from the bottom of the mountain were 2 car tire tracks. My uncle had shot a kudu bull there during the rains the year before. Now the chances of that happening are like 1 in a trillion. It is totally undeveloped country, and it's cattle country, 25,000 acres. There are a handful of roads, very few fences. So I knew back then, I know now, back then, that the Lord was trying to reach me, but I didn't see it back then. And I followed those tracks, and then they faded, saw where they cut the trees to get the vehicle in, carried on through the mountains until finally we got to the main road. And they were all spread out looking for me as it was getting dark. And I never told anyone what happened on that mountain that day. I thought they'd laugh at me and think I was crazy or weak. That's how it was back then. Sitting in that courtroom before I was sentenced, I prayed hard, up through the window into the clouds. Nothing happened. During my first year in prison, I prayed hundreds of times. Nothing changed. And I wondered where God was time and time again. And then when I forgave them in that first year, I knew there was a spiritual feeling. So I knew He was there, but I didn't know the Lord back then. And, the conditions, I mean, there were people dying everywhere. There was no water, no food. My fiancée left me. And I was promised I was going home for years. Story after story went on. And then I had that incident on death row, which changed my life forever. Although I didn't go home for 2.5 years, I knew that there was a bigger picture. I knew there were bigger things in life. Somehow, something just said this. And I always told my kids that everything happens for a reason. Now I had to walk my talk and accept that. And before prison, I was a big fish in a little Bulawayo going nowhere, like a hamster on a wheel going round and round. And it was all about me, my empire, money, more and more. And now I'm a little fish in a whole wide world making a huge difference. And it's not about me. It's about helping other people and making a difference in other people's lives. And I now have a purpose. I never had a purpose before. And the lesson here is, no matter what hardships you're going through in life, just remember, you're being prepared for where you're going. God has a plan for each and every one of us. I wish I could express the happy, bubbly, exciting, beautiful feeling I felt as I walked out those prison gates to freedom after 10 years of hell. People don't appreciate freedom. And I've realized that even when you're not in prison, there are ways in which we imprison ourselves. So our business partnerships, badly selected careers, being obsessed with money and ambition in the corporate world, even unhappy marriages. And it's only when you have your freedom completely taken away do you realize in many ways that you are actually in prison too. And when I look back at it all, I wish I could somehow get through to people how precious and priceless freedom is. Freedom is not just not being in prison. Freedom is the ability to make a choice and act on it. Freedom is letting go of what you can't control. Freedom is forgiveness. Freedom is being free from negativity. Freedom brings health. If you can be free in all areas of your life, then you'll reach your full potential. I want to take you back to the year 2000, the year of the incident. I was traveling in a private jet from Fort Lauderdale to Miami, Florida. And on the one side of me was my client, Ray Anthony, a billionaire from Pittsburgh. And on the other side was General Norman Schwarzkopf. He was the officer commanding of the United States Armed Forces during the Gulf War, the most powerful man in the world at the time. We were flying from Tampa, we collected him in Tampa, to Reno, Nevada, to attend the Safari Club International Convention together. It was a huge honor. And I remember standing with Glenn Dubin and Louis Bacon, two billionaires that I spent many wonderful times on safari with. I remember my Ferrari, V8 Ferrari for a month in Miami, many times on a private yacht. My life back then was all about fancy cars, private yachts, and mixing with billionaires. I thought I was invincible, flying high, thinking I was bulletproof. Unbeknown to me, my life was being controlled by ego, power, and money. Satan had sunk his claws deep into my soul, and I didn't even know it. I was as far away from God as I could get. Make sure you're not in that lost world too, because the only place you'll find peace is with Jesus. Not another houseboat, fancy car, or another million. I was a wild teenager, make no mistake. Drinking, fighting, poaching, anything that pushed the boundaries of the law was fun. I mean, it was wild during the war days, never considering the consequences. But had I known during all those years what I know now, life would have been very different. You don't want to know what else I went through in prison. I had to fight for my life on many occasions. And it was by the grace of God that I came out alive. Thousands didn't. With all due respect, be very careful what path you choose to follow in this world these days. Don't start mixing with the wrong people and pushing the boundaries of the law, because you don't want to go where I've been. There's no mercy in prison, none. It's real and it's rough. And I give all the glory to Jesus for bringing me through that nightmare. After I left prison, I'd lost everything. All my companies went broke, and I had a lot of debt left behind. And I went back into the safari business, working for guys that used to work for me. Very humiliating, borrowing vehicles. I lost everything that I had. I had gone from leading the pack down to starting again. And I never forget what Jesus did in my life, what the Lord had, how my prayers had been answered. But then I always considered, how can it be like that? Because I've got nothing. How can you leave me like this? So I never prayed, nothing, because it never changed anything when I was still back in prison. And then I was asked to do a talk to a bunch of farmers. And it made a huge impact about what I'd gone through. And I was telling one of the clients one night, who was very interested in my story, and he said, have you got a copy of that speech? So I said, yeah, it's on my phone. So he said, can I have a look? So I showed him, scrolled through. He said, I've got a new life for you, my friend. This is your calling, and I want to help you. So I thought, no, he's had too much red wine or something, you know. So I used to drink still in those days. I've been clear 2.5 years now, I'm very happy to say. Anyway, that started on my talking career. So he flew me to Joburg, and I got to put a PowerPoint together, and just started talking all around South Africa to all little groups that had known ex-Zimbabweans. And then I met my wife on one of those trips, and she had been a Christian for a long time. And then I started really getting interested from what happened on my 2 encounters with the Lord, trying to get to know the Lord again. And we had many, many prayers answered. But there still wasn't that powerful connection that I was hungry for. I wanted supernatural stuff. I wanted to see things happen, like miracles and stuff, that would really make me, I think growing up, losing my dad when I was young, and rejection issues from young, I had a fear of rejection, trust issues, and I built this wall around me that I would never submit. I would never let anyone in, and I would never have the faith that when I prayed for someone, they'd heal. And that's what I always, as a kid, I remember I always wanted to heal people. I don't know why. I just had this passion to heal people. And I never felt that where I went. I went to many churches, and I still didn't feel that power that would break down those walls around me. Made me feel good, and made me want to be part of this. But it wasn't deep for me. And then we were offered a trip to Israel, and it was also supernaturally paid, all for free, on a Christian tour. And that was a huge impact for me. And we went to the Feast of Tabernacles, and Angus Buchan was preaching. And I'll never forget when you walked in, there were 4,500 people to get in. So you're all in lines waiting. You go through and you get a little bun thing and a bit of water. And so I clapped mine, having my drink. My wife, while she was drinking, this tall American guy walked up to me and he said, "Are you a pastor?" I said, "No." He said, "The Lord's going to put a mantle on you. You need to prepare yourself, to position yourself." So I thought, oh, he's a friendly guy. And then he started prophesying over my wife. And then he went on and on. I don't remember clearly because I wasn't saved back then, so I didn't remember that stuff. My wife remembers it a lot. And then he said to me, "Do you receive it?" And I said, "Oh, yeah." And then I remember walking away and saying to my wife, "What's a mantle, babe?" I mean, I had no idea what anything was. But when we got in there, Angus Buchan was preaching. And I remember he preached on the power of reading the Bible. And he made us all vow. So 4,500 people had to come up around the stage. And we all put our hands up and we vowed that we'd read the Bible from cover to cover. And I tried to read it before and it just didn't make sense. And I think it was a King James. I gave up on that one. So when we got home, I bought an NIV And I started reading, and I couldn't believe how this manly stuff, from the Old Testament. And I just, devoured it once, and then I read it again. So I've read the Bible about 3 times now. And now, just going through it, and I'm getting more revelation and more power from it. But that trip started me on my walk with life, with Jesus. And then I still didn't give my life to the Lord. Before I went to Israel, I got baptized. I still didn't get out of the tub, and everything was different. So that bothered me, because I'd heard how people, when they opened their eyes, everything changed. So, I think it was the walls around me, but I got baptized in the River Jordan, where Jesus was baptized by John the Baptist. That was very moving. And I remember floating in the Dead Sea. It was incredible, and you're 390 meters below sea level. That was also something to get over. And seeing the road where Jesus carried the cross, standing there and just visualizing it all, that was very, very moving for me. And then, obviously, the tomb. We went inside the tomb, and I saw where they laid Jesus, and the Garden of Gethsemane. And you just wish you could talk to those trees, and they could answer you. It was amazing. And then Capernaum, where Jesus grew up, and all the foundations are all still there. And I remember just feeling, the feeling of my hair all standing up when I saw all that. It was amazing. And then the Sea of Galilee, that was incredible. My wife was in her element on the ship. We went on a boat. But when you go through what I endured, they crush you in every way, physically and mentally. And no matter how, to pick yourself up again, no matter how confident you were when you went in, is tough. They broke my confidence, my spirit, my soul, everything. And I had these huge wounds that I thought would never heal, and a massive void in my life that I thought would never be filled. But the moment I met my wife, Sandra, 8 years ago now, I knew there was something very special about her. Within 3 years, the Lord used her to heal me completely and make me whole and content once again. And I could never have imagined the peace and happiness that I now experience every day. And I want to thank you, my love. Thank you, Jesus. The company you keep influences your thinking influences your actions influence your character determines your destiny. In conclusion, I was fortunate. I'd made it big, was very successful, and possibly during that time, I became a bit arrogant. But that experience has made me realize that I'm just a normal human being. That you can't value your life based on your title, your success, or your material possessions. If you had everything taken away from you right now, who would be left? What would people see looking at you as a person? We need to look at our core values more deeply and see how we can change lives and maybe make a difference in this world. There were times in there when I felt this was the end. I didn't have the mental strength left to overcome more of those never-ending challenges. But from the bowels of despair comes this realization that just as my mind had helped drag me through those depths that far, so could it pull me out of them. Each and every one of us, when you dig deep enough, can find this inner strength to get through life's toughest times and deepest holes, out of our cages, out of the dark. Every one of you here today is faced with challenges, day in and day out. Those that you look for and those that sneak up on you from behind. But who you are and the depth of your determination is what can elevate you to become someone that people will look up to and forever remember. For many years, I asked myself why I had to go to prison. Why me? What did I ever do to deserve all that? And about 5 years ago, I had a strong spiritual revelation that I was supposed to go to prison. And I must accept that. And that was tough to understand, but I now see how the Lord drew me away from the outdoor safari life that I love so dearly to find my purpose. He has taken me from humble upbringings to great success, mixing with the world's elite, flying in private jets across the world, etc. Then being put through that nightmare and losing everything I'd worked my whole life for. But He has prepared me for this calling. And believe it or not, I thank God for my 10 years in prison. I do. Because I'm a better person now than I would ever have been. I don't know how to explain this, but I know 100% that God has redeemed me. And I'm a better person now than I would have been had I not gone to prison. I'm stronger, I know God better, I understand people more, and I believe that it's made me able to reach out to you to let you know that God is out there. He loves you, He has a plan for you, and don't ever doubt that. Do you think anyone can ever fully recover from a terrible setback in life? Or you're looking at someone that did? You're looking at living proof that you can recover from whatever life throws at you. God will answer your prayers, He'll set your feet back on the ground, and He'll offer you a beautiful life. Just put your faith in Jesus and walk with Him every day. Amen.
Maybe just a couple of questions that I've got for you.
Sure.
I think the question that I like asking everybody is, who is Jesus to you today? Yeah.
Jesus to me is everything. I know that He has taken, when I look at my life where I was, and I see the picture that He's planned for me. I see exactly how He's taken my life to create this testimony to where I am now. I mean, my visions that I've been given and prophecies are so much bigger than where I was going. All I was going to have at the end of the day was money. That was it. No purpose, no legacy, no nothing. Just, oh yeah, Russ left a fortune for his kids, they're having a ball, that's it. Now, I'm impacting so many lives, and I want to leave a legacy. I want to leave a legacy of reaching or inspiring 1 billion people. That would make my day, and inspiring by bringing them to the Lord. I believe there will be a revival soon, because I see it in the corporate world, and I want to be part of it. And I'm serving in a church now, and since I started serving and tithing and sowing financially, if people don't understand those principles that are in the Bible, then I seriously need you to look at it, because it's worked for us.
Amen.
So Jesus is everything for me. Yeah.
And then I think the next thing that I want to ask you is, people busy watching this video, you want to pray for them?
Sorry?
People that's busy watching this video right now, do you want to pray for them? People that's battling with forgiveness and bitterness, and yeah, please pray for the viewers.
Father, I come before you, that whoever hears the sound of my voice praying today will take my life lessons that I learned in forgiveness, especially gratitude, freedom, and apply them to their lives and see how their lives will change. Father, I ask you to have your hand upon every person listening. Cover them with the blood of Jesus and restore them like you've restored me. Give them what you gave me, how you've saved me, Father, from where I was going, ruining myself with parties and not immorality, just living for the earthly things, not for the spiritual things. And I want to thank you for that, Lord. I want to thank you for the souls that will be reached in this podcast. And I ask you, every one of you listening here, please, just pray. Just try praying once and see how Jesus will answer you. I pray for that in Jesus' mighty name. Amen.